as I said, it is World Mental Health Day, and we shine the light on mental health, breaking stigmas, and embracing hope. Kagiso, who do you have as our guest?
Definitely. Indeed, today marks Mental Health Day, and this has been a huge stigma that needs to be broken, especially amongst our country and amongst our society. And today I am pleased to have our guest, Roshni, from the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, who will be joining us as we're going to be discussing on everything that is mental health. Tulani will be joining us a bit later on because he did mention that he's having some network issues there. But let's start the conversation here by welcoming Roshni. Roshni, good evening and welcome to the News Desk.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for accepting the invite. I want us to start the conversation on the overview of what SADAG is all about and the role that you play in advocacy for mental health in South Africa, and what services do you provide?
Sure. Ask us what services we don't provide. It's a shorter list. So SADAG is a mental health advocacy group. We have been running for 30 years now. We have a call center that runs 24/7, 365. We do community outreach. We have 2 containers based in Diepsloot and Ivory Park for community members that can't get that don't have money to get to services and need some sort of counseling. They can visit our containers in Diepsloot and Ivory Park. We have counselors, over 200 counselors that man those helplines, which are toll-free helplines. So if you make a call, it's toll-free, and we fund those lines solely. We run the country's only suicide crisis line, and we pay for those calls. We do wellness stands. We do school outreach projects where we go into high schools and we speak about mental health and suicide prevention. We go into companies. There's so many things that we do. We have support groups. We have over 200 support groups that are run by patients, for patients. So anything to do with mental health is what the South African Depression and Anxiety Group does. So anything to do mental health advocacy, that's what we do.
Roshni, according to the 2023 Mental State of the World report, South Africa ranks amongst the highest in the levels of mental health distress. How concerning is this report?
So it's very concerning. I mean, what we need to remember is that 30 years ago, when SADAG started, nobody was speaking about mental health. SADAG was 6 years old when I started, and we went into the rural areas in the Northwest Province and the Northern Cape, and nobody was speaking about mental health. And we went in and we spoke to traditional healers. And at that time, people didn't understand what mental health was or mental illness was. And understandably, they would consult with traditional healers first. And traditional healers would come to us and say, okay, so I've seen the situation and I don't know what's happening. Can you advise? But we had family members chained to trees because they said, we don't know what's happening. And it turned out that it was a case of schizophrenia. We had family members being wheeled in wheelbarrows to us. 30 years later, we now have family members speaking about it. We've now got traditional healers that have run support groups for us. And so the situation is a lot better than it was 30 years ago. And we have people speaking about mental health. We have people doing research on mental health. Not as much as we would like, but it's getting better. And so the fact that we have research and we have those stats means that we are talking about it a lot more. But the reality is that the stigma still exists, and we need to reduce that stigma. We need people to understand that just like any other illness, mental illness is just that. It's an illness. It is not a disease, and it's not something that we should be ashamed of, and it is not a sign of weakness. And so speaking about it is something that we should acknowledge, and we should encourage. We should encourage people to speak about it.
Indeed, Roshni. Like, how do we break these stigmas? And another thing is that there are a lot of misconceptions that are going around our societies when people are seeking help. As you're talking, that a lot of people would go even to traditional healers to actually, try to understand what is happening with them. And now, how do we now start that conversation in the society of breaking these stigmas? And if ever there's someone that is also, seeking help, how do we change these misconceptions?
And we don't want to stop you from speaking to a traditional healer, because that is your belief. And so if you need to speak to a traditional healer first, do that. That's okay, because that's what you believe. But at the end of the day, we want you to also understand that, also consider that it is an illness. And so just like you would consult with a doctor if you have diabetes or if you have cancer, see it as an illness and consult the right sort of doctor when it comes to a mental illness, because you would need the correct treatment for a mental illness. And so you would probably need a psychologist. You would probably even maybe need to see a GP. And sometimes you may not need to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Sometimes with a mental illness, you may just need a support group. You may just need someone to speak to. Often we have depression or we have stress, and it's something that we may just need to speak about to feel a bit better. And so when it comes to that stigma, and especially in our communities, and it's not just in our townships and our African communities, sometimes it's in our Indian communities as well. We don't want to speak about our emotions because it's seen as a sign of weakness. You don't speak about being sad, and you have to be strong. And a lot of times when we go into the schools, the kids say to us, well, my dad says, oh, you want to be sad? I'll give you something to be sad about. We speak to the parents as well, because we have to acknowledge that we are living in a very different society than we were living in 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And we have to acknowledge that mental illness is real, your feelings are valid, and it's okay to not be okay. And so, again, we have come a very long way, but again, we have a long way to go as well.
Well, Roshni, what are some of the unique challenges facing mental health care in South Africa that are unique to this country?
So I think the fact that we are so understaffed in our hospitals, our staff members are so overworked, and they're seeing so many things that affect them themselves, and they don't get the right sort of debriefing and the right sort of treatment. Also, the trauma that they have to deal with. There's a lot of trauma that they see on an ongoing basis, and because they are so short-staffed, because we are losing a lot of our own professionals to other countries, and so unfortunately that's the reality, is that we do need a lot more psychologists, we need a lot more psychiatrists, and so the reality is that we also need a lot more people to open up and say, I'm struggling and I need help. We need our government to put more people into hospitals. In terms of more professionals, we need more psychiatrists and more psychologists in the hospitals. I mean, if we're going to schools, we need more psychologists and psychiatrists in the schools as well. The government itself doesn't have that many psychologists and psychiatrists to support the schools. And so our teachers are struggling. Our teachers are having to deal with students that are struggling. And in turn, our teachers are struggling. And so we are so understaffed in all aspects of mental health that we really do need to look at that situation.
Definitely. Indeed, right. To those who are tuning in, we are having a conversation around World Mental Health Day. Please do use that comment section to engage with Roshni. She is here to answer all the questions that you have around, mental health awareness. Slow_gem30 days. What do you think of the quote, "Men don't cry"?
I was brought up in a community, not in a household, in a community where men don't cry. You don't talk about your feelings. If you feel sad, suck it up. We have support groups now that are run by men for men, where men actually do speak about it. And that gives us so much hope, because men are saying it's okay to cry. And that in itself is a big step forward. And so we are not looking for big, huge leaps and bounds. That in itself is such a huge success. Men are allowed to cry. And the more men that speak about it, the more men will realize that it's okay. It's okay to cry. What I do encourage is that if you are a man that is going through it, speak about it so that more men can speak about it. I was speaking on a podcast recently, and we're talking about, and this year's theme for World Mental Health Day is mental health in the workplace. And we were talking about walking into your workplace and saying, I am struggling. You never know who is listening to that conversation and suddenly says, okay, so if they are struggling, it's okay for me to say, I am struggling. And it's the same thing with men, that if they hear another man saying, okay, I had a panic attack this morning, you don't know who's hearing you. You don't know who says, okay, I can actually chat to him and he can help me. So speak about it, because you just never know who you may be able to help. Talk about it. Just talk about it. So men, you are allowed to cry. In fact, crying is really good, because being able to express those emotions is a really good way to deal with it.
Definitely, because this is one of the misconceptions that we are growing up in our households, that you need to be strong as a man. You don't cry. You must not show your weak point. And I'm not saying that this is some of the things. This is the cause for GBV and other things, but not dealing with these issues might be leading to such actions that we might be seeing. You touched on the theme for the year, that it's all about bringing mental health in the workplace. What are some strategies that employers can reinforce to make sure that they promote mental health in the workplace?
And you need to be able to let those that you are managing and leading, let them know that, I've also been through a tough time and I got through it. So if you are going through a tough time, come to me. Let me tell you how I got through it. Because I can almost guarantee you, all of us have been sad at some point. After COVID, we've all been through the most. We've all been through the ringer, and we all know what it's like to be stressed. We all know what it's like to have those really dark days, but we've all been through it. We tell the kids in the schools that we've been through tough times, and we got through it. We are going through tough times, and we will get through it. And you best believe there are still tough times ahead of us, and we will still get through it. And that is the power of resilience. And that's what we need to teach our youngsters. That's what we need to teach the people that work with us. But we need to lead from, we need to teach them from the top down, that I've been through it. So speak about it. If you are a manager and you have been through it, speak about it so that your employees know that, okay, so he's been through it and he did it, and he'll understand that this is really tough. Or even if you haven't been through it, you have a family member. I can guarantee you have a family member that has been through it. Speak about those experiences that you've had.
Well, Roshni, what are the common signs of depression? Because we may misdiagnose each other, or it could be a thing of, oh, she's moody today, or she's having a bad day. So what are the common signs of depression where you start suspecting that this person could be suffering from depression? They're not just moody or anything like that.
You know what it is? It's a change in behavior. And so if, for example, they're eating too much or eating too little, sleeping too much or sleeping too little, withdrawing from social activities. So let's say, for example, Roshni loves to eat and is still eating. That doesn't mean I'm depressed. But if Roshni loves to eat and is suddenly not eating for 2 weeks or longer, or doesn't like to eat and now is eating too much and picking up weight for 2 weeks or longer, then there's a problem. So it is signs that happen every single day for 2 weeks or longer. I love to sleep and now I'm not sleeping at all, or I never used to sleep and now I'm sleeping all the time. I'm crying all the time, or I'm socially withdrawing. I'm not doing things that I used to love doing. I used to love going out and I prefer to stay at home. My mood has suddenly changed. So look out for that change in behavior. But it has to be every single day for 2 weeks or longer. And if you aren't sure, that's what the South African Depression and Anxiety Group is there for. I don't expect anyone to suddenly become a psychologist or a GP and go out and diagnose your friends. That's not what we are there for. We are not all therapists. Our website has a whole lot of information, but what you can do is, you can say to the friend, say, you used to laugh all the time, but for the last 2 weeks you have suddenly been so quiet and so sad. Is something wrong? Ask those questions, and it's okay to ask those questions, because sometimes maybe that's just what someone wants to hear. Maybe they just want to hear, okay, she sees the change in me, and maybe they don't want to say anything, but they at least know that, okay, she notices. And the day I am ready to speak, she'll be there to listen to me.
Yeah.
We all need that.
Well, we have a question from, yes, we do. We have a question from Katism. I hope I'm saying it correctly. She's asking, how can teachers create a classroom environment that supports the mental well-being of students?
Firstly, what I want to say is that teachers, we identify that you yourselves are so overwhelmed and under so much pressure, and doing such an amazing job, because you sometimes are the one person that these 60 students come to school for, because they depend so much on you. And the fact that you want to make this classroom environment supportive for your students is amazing. I think just allowing them to know that this is your safe space, and if you want to speak to me, I am here for you. I think that's number one. When we go out into the schools, there will always be one or two teachers that a child will say, I go to her, I will speak to her. I think put SADAG's number up in that classroom. Ask us for our care packs. We will send it to you. It comes with posters and brochures. Put SADAG's number up. Put the poster up. Let them know that if you ever want to speak, I am here for you. I am here to speak to you. Come to me during break, or chat to me whenever you want. Put up a buddy box if you want, a box where someone can just pop a letter in if they want to. But I mean, the fact that you as a teacher have posted that question, I take my hat off to you. You are doing a brilliant job already. That question in itself says that those kids know that they can reach out to you already.
Very interesting. Hey, it's not only about bringing it in our homes, but the whole society in general needs to take part in making sure that we all have that someone that is always checking up on us, that is always helping us in keeping our minds in check, and even ourselves keeping ourselves, our mental health in check. What would be some mechanisms that people can use, especially individuals that are dealing with trauma or chronic issues? How can they deal? What are effective mechanisms?
I think number one, and you just said it right now, is check in. And when we say do a mental health check-in, we often check in on our friends, right? Hi, how are you doing? Are you okay? But how often do we check in on ourselves? How often do we say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, how am I doing right now? Am I a 1? Am I a 10? Have I eaten today? Have I taken a walk? Have I had breakfast? Have I done some deep breathing? How often do we actually check in on ourselves? And so we have to do that. It's so important to check in on ourselves before we even check in on others. And so if you are someone that's going through something, check in on yourself. Make sure that you are eating well, that you are sleeping well, that you are, if journaling is something that is good for you, journal. If you are someone that expresses yourself through poetry or drawing, do that. But most importantly, express those emotions. If you need to speak to someone, speak. But keep on checking in. Do those check-ins. Make sure that you are maintaining your mental well-being. Make sure that you are okay before you can help anybody else. Always check in on your own mental well-being. And once you've acknowledged where you are and you've helped yourself, then only can you help anybody else.
Well, Roshni, how can one access SADAG resources? Are there any costs involved?
So in order to access our resources, like I mentioned, we have the toll-free helpline, which is 0800 567 567. That number is available 24/7, 365 days a year. All of our resources are available on www.sadag.org. Some people may just want to WhatsApp us. Those numbers are also available on our website. Our WhatsApp numbers are only available between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. If you want to SMS us and get a counselor to call you back, that number is 31393. There is a list or a variety of resources on our website in terms of material and resources. And please access that on our website. But anything you need, we have the most amazing counselors that work through the night to help absolutely anyone. And so that call center is always available.
Definitely, there is help for you. Just make sure that you do check in with SADAG and all that, and all the resources that they offer. As we wrap up this conversation now, Roshni, it is World Mental Health Day, right? What would be that one message that, that one person that might be, looking at this live session even after we've posted it, as they're going through and engaging it? What would be that one message that you want them to hear?
I think the most important message is that there is hope and there is help available. There are the most amazing counselors that are willing to listen to you. You may just feel that it is a stranger on the other line, but believe me, it's the most amazing, wonderful stranger that wants to help you and that wants you to believe that your life is so worthwhile. And so if it's the only thing you ever do, it's pick up that phone and dial that number, because you are so worth it. So please give SADAG a call, because that shouldn't ever be an option. Dial that number. Taking your life should never be an option.
Giving up
we'll definitely share the SADAG number. Yeah, we'll definitely share on our Instagram page, so our viewers should look out for that. Roshni, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your expertise. Your work with mental health may shine through and through. You're doing such a wonderful job. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. Yeah, that was Roshni from the SADAG, just explaining to us everything, understanding what is mental health and what are some of the resources that we need to tap into and look into, right?